the experiences of Academy graduates and those who helped shape its story, we explore the eras, missions, and moments that shaped the Air Force, the Space Force, and the nation. I'm Lieutenant Colonel retired Steve Simon, class of 1977, and this is the Heritage Minute Podcast. My guest today is Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Monetti, class of 1987. Tony graduated from the Air Force Academy as the Cold War was entering its final years and went on to serve during one of the most transformational decades in Air Force history. During his career, he flew the B-52 Stratofortress and later became one of the Air Force's early B-2 Spirit pilots, giving him a front-row seat to the evolution of air power from the Cold War through the era of stealth technology and precision warfare. Over the course of his service, Tony witnessed the Air Force adapt to a rapidly changing world, from the collapse of the Soviet Union to Operation Desert Storm and the emergence of new technologies that would reshape modern military operations. Today, we'll use Tony's experiences to explore what it was like to serve during the 1990s, a decade that transformed not only the Air Force, but the nature of warfare itself. Well, with all that introduction, Tony, welcome to the Heritage Minute Podcast.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure to be with you. 87 Wings from Heaven, baby, right here.
Glad to have you on the program. So we're going to start off talking about kind of what the Air Force was like in 1987. You threw your hat in the air at Falcon Stadium, headed out of the academy, and as a graduating cadet, what do you think the Air Force would look like?
Well, I was definitely excited because I'd finally achieved my dream of graduating. My mom and dad were in the stands, and they were instrumental in helping form my career. And I threw that hat up and jumped in my '77 red Corvette with my fiance in the seat and and drove with the heater full on because it was stuck open to Phoenix, Arizona. And we got the first place, and it was the adventure of a lifetime. I went off to Williams Air Force Base and earned my pilot wings, and it was everything and more than I ever expected, and it's just been such a joy.
So, of course, in those days, the height of the Cold War, how was life shaped by the Cold War, by our competition with the Soviet Union?
Yes, it's hard for people to imagine now, but back in '87 and '88, when I got my first assignment as a B-52 bomber pilot, I was stationed in Griffith, New York, and there was a Cold War going on, and literally the Soviet Empire was at its height, and we had a strong military and president, and we would literally have airplanes on alert, nuclear alert, and I remember. About every month being in a bunker, going out, and, getting a briefing for potential targets, and then going out and checking the weapons and the systems and being ready on call. And they would, occasionally do what's called klaxon, klaxon, klaxon. So if you're not in the bunker, you're jumping in the vehicle, putting the light on, and then go right to the jet. And it was an incredible experience. And then occasionally we would generate on alert and then fly actual sorties. We call them 11.4-hour missions, taking off at night and landing in the morning, flying 4 hours down low level sometime with night vision goggles. And the mindset was different. It was all about, the Cold War, where you had this mutually assured destruction type of mentality that if one nation launched a nuclear attack, where there was a credible force that was going to be equal, if not greater. And therefore, it was quite an interesting time in our history.
Yeah, it was indeed. And of course, so many rapid global changes took place early in your career. The first being, as we were talking about, the Cold War, and that ending, of course, the U.S.'s competition with the Soviet Union that began as World War II ended. I was surprised that it finally ended. What was your thought? What did you see from your vantage point when the Cold War did in fact come to a conclusion?
It was a surreal experience because no one was going from, you know, West Berlin into East Berlin. They were all knocking down a wall, wanting to come to the West. So there was this incredible spirit of humanity that craved freedom, which we cherish in America. And to be part of that history, to see the Cold War come to an end, for the wall to be taken down, and for the people from the East and the West to enter a new era. Um, it was a good time in our history as a humanity, if you will. And then to see how had to reshape our Air Force as a result of not, you know, having to worry, if you will, as much as far as a nuclear threat from the former Soviet Union. We had to transform as a force, and we did. And I would think that our leaders at the time did a great job doing that.
How did the you mentioned the obviously changing missions and all the uncertainty from the what we had known essentially for what 30, 40 years suddenly changed. What time of missions? How did the missions change in your career field?
Yeah, so a lot of time, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they'll create targets, JPITLs, Joint Priority Target List, net target lists, basically affects your training and your ability to accomplish any kind of mission in various theaters of the world. So we went from a Cold War mindset where it was mainly focused on flying low level nuclear bomb run missions against certain adversaries to now different type of threats, such as what occurred in the Middle East and Desert Storm later on. So we had to adapt and overcome. Flexibility is the key to air power, and that's exactly what our leaders did. And they transformed the force from more of a nuclear penetrating role, especially in the bomber field, to conventional warfare and the integration of precision weapon munitions. So now you have these bombers that could do nukes to adapt and change to affect the ground environment, where we could do what's called nine lines, in effect, helping the Army or Marines or a strategic bombing. So it was an interesting time. I witnessed it. I went from flying B-52s ready for nukes to adapting to coordinating with Army and A-10 guys and learning that mindset. So that was interesting.
And of course, we cannot understate the importance of that, the magnitude of that strategic shift. I mean, it was obviously the biggest thing probably since 1945 when World War II ended, and obviously it changed pretty much everything we knew about the global situation.
Yes, and then going from the B-52 to the B-1, I actually flew the B-1 also for a couple of years. So I integrated into this new technology of low-level fast penetrator with precision weapon capability, and then later on into the B-2. So I had this real opportunity to witness the evolution of bomber technology and how it changed and adapted to, meet the needs of the U.S. Air Force.
And of course, nothing stays the same for long. And just a couple of years after the end of the Cold War, of course, Desert Shield, Desert Storm came around. And I remember my first day assigned to the Pentagon was the day Iraq invaded Kuwait. And I spent the first week or two in a command post as we sorted out that. And so, pretty interesting experience from my standpoint. How did your Desert Shield / Desert Storm experience go?
I remember coming back from one of those 11.4-hour sorties down low level. As soon as I got back to the squadron, our commander was waiting for us, and I thought that was kind of strange. I'm like, "Oh, did we do something wrong?" But he's like, "No, boys, pack up your bags, get your bags, and report here tomorrow. You're deploying. We don't know where you're going or how long the orders are." And literally I went home. I was supposed to be going camping with my wife and my firstborn son Nico, and I told her I'm deploying. I don't know where I'm going, what I'm, where the orders are. But I remember, we were supposed to go camping, so I did a little mock-up tent in my room, and my son was in my chest, and we still went camping that night in my house. I'll never forget that experience, as a father. And then knowing that I'm potentially going to war, not knowing where I'm going. So it was a difficult transformation for me as a human being, as far as leaving my wife and newborn son and not knowing. I didn't even know where Kuwait was. I'll be honest with you. And so literally we went to Loring and then California, Hawaii, Guam, and before you knew it, I'm in the middle of the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia, and we're doing Desert Shield. And the Shield was prior to the storm. And so we started then training, and we could talk more about that, but that was interesting, just that nature of deploying and going.
So the mission obviously evolved yet again for you, and well, and for the Air Force, obviously writ large.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the academy prepared me for that type of fear of the unknown mentality and to target the chaos. And so I credit the U.S. Air Force Academy with our core values and our understanding that we are here to serve a mission and a purpose to fly, fight, and win. And I think that helped fuel me on, hey, just stay focused on training and the way you've been trained, and then do your job. And then it ultimately came down to trusting the men and women that I served with. My radar nav, the navigator, the gunner, the electronic warfare officer, the maintainers, the munition guys. So it was exciting in a way. It's not something that I looked forward to going to war potentially, but at the same time, I was ready for it, if you will, because we train the way we fight and we fight the way we train, and that's a great thing that America does, and I hope we continue to do so.
The phrase "flexibility is the key to air power" certainly asserted itself in that certain situation, and obviously the airmen stepped up big in
Amen.
that situation.
So now it's all based on training and discipline and being on time and in formations. We're talking about flying 4 ships of B-52s, air refueling with tankers, a couple times, and then going in low level. A lot of guys don't know that, but in Desert Storm, we ended up going in low level to defeat the threat of air, of fighters coming up against bombers. So it was interesting.
Please expound on that before we move on to another topic.
When I landed in Diego and then as the storm was going to kick off, we actually knew before the rest of the world that the war was on. Because when I got to the command post, the commander says, "You guys are on crew rest, learn the threats, get some sleep because you're going in." And so the war had started because it was like about 8 hours to launch out of Diego, air refuel a couple times, and then go low level near Saudi and then into Kuwait. So that mindset shift of, wow, we're going to war. This is no longer training. And I remember watching CNN. Wolf Blitzer was on. He goes, "Everything's quiet out here," and then all of a sudden, wait, what's this? And then and I'm like, "Yeah, bomb should be falling right now, man." And then that became real. It was like, wow, we're going to war. This is like since Vietnam, man. Like this is it for America, and we were all in, and we were ready. And then now it's just time to execute the way you've been trained. And that was challenging. And I remember writing letters to my wife and my parents in case I didn't make it. And I went through that, challenge, the mental, the spiritual push, if you will, that you're going to war and you may or may not make it back. So be at peace, and that kind of mindset. So I remember knowing that I'm going, and keep in mind, CNN was showing some of the airmen that were captured, beat up. So try to kind of put your mindset of where we're at is about to go launch on a combat mission, and we're seeing propaganda from the enemy of our captured airmen and pilots beat up, and people, hitting them, and so I think that psyops worked on their part in a way because it affect. I wish we didn't. Yeah, have to see that. You know what I mean? So I was a little bit scared. I'll be honest with you, with everybody listening. I'm always honest, but I'm being vulnerable by sharing with you that I wrote letters to my wife and kids, and I went to go see a chaplain, and it was a priest, and he said to me, "What's wrong?" And I go, I'm about to go on a combat mission in a few hours, and I'm scared." And he goes, "That's okay." He goes, "Son," he goes, "God will never abandon you." And I remember crying, and I got on my. I think I needed to cry because I had it all. Men a lot of time meant we keep it inside, and I got on my knees, and he prayed over me, and he said, "God will never abandon you," and he prayed over me, and I felt this incredible sense of peace afterwards that, okay, let's go, man. you know, and so now here I am strapped into a B-52 and we're launching and we're air refueling and we're going down low and anti-aircraft artillery, being shot at us left and right. It was a foggy night and I had my night vision goggles on and all I would see is these tracers. And then we had to take over lead because lead broke and now we became lead and we're attacking a large oil facility south of Baghdad, and they had it heavily fortified. and we were basically carrying 51 750-pound bombs, dropping them, and we lined up on the target. And right at 8 seconds to release, I could see the tank starting to appear through the fog because of the fires from the other bombers, and all I saw was just like a sea of like bullets. And there's no we can do because the B-52 is the half a length of a football field. It's this big flying bomber, 187-foot wingspan, and we're just level, man. And I remember like the airplane was shaking because I had never dropped 51 750-pound bombs at 500 feet. And then we had a missile launch, and then all of a sudden the night sky lit up, and then a secondary explosion happened. The tanks were hit. Like we were right on target, and then a missile launch was against us, and so the electronic warfare officers said hunker pilot missile launch. So we get down low, we're dropping chaff from flares, and it misses us. But as I look in, I could see the radar altimeter went to 50 feet, and we were about to hit the ground. And I took the controls. The commander already had it back. I was controlling the throttles. He was doing the yoke. It's kind of weird, but that's the way we trained back then. Anyhow, I thought for sure I was going to be vaporized. And I remember that moment in time, even like right now, I'm there. Uh, I didn't think about my wife or my son or my parents or the Air Force. It was all about one thing. I was at peace with God. And I was like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? But obviously I didn't die, and we got into ground effect. The missile missed us, but the missile hit the airplane in front of me. Uh, Another B-52 got hit in the tail. We had engine 5 go on fire. I shut it down. Then I had to shut down 6 because it stayed on fire. So we egress, declare an emergency, coordinate with AWACS, chaos. And now instead of going back to Diego because we have 2 engines out, we land in Jeddah, Saudi. And I kissed the ground, man. Anyhow, that was the kind of my first combat mission. And welcome to U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, it's a memorable event for sure. Again, fortunately, the Desert Storm concluded rather rapidly and for the most part successfully. Let's move on to something else that happened in the 90s. Again, a decade of lots of changes. The incorporation of stealth technology. Of course, you were one of the early operators of the B-2 program. So what did stealth represent in the 1990s?
Yeah, the B-1 was semi-stealthy. A lot of people don't know that. So I was integrated to that. But when I found out about the B-2, they had just sent a message or trying to hire initial cadre. I put in for it. And I was fascinated because this new technology of the B-2 was revolutionary. And I was able to be part of a new elite team, if you will, that would integrate this notion of not being necessarily invisible, but low observable. And when you integrate it with tactics, you're able to penetrate enemy air defenses and then put bombs on target on time. We call it BOTAT. So it was exciting. And when I first saw it, I was like, wow, I want to be part of that program. And, everything kind of lined up because I had B-52 and B-1 experience. I was able to put in for the program, and it was somewhat of a competitive, you know, opportunity for people to become part of the initial team. But I was selected. Yeah, it was really cool, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and you use the term. I was thinking revolutionary as far as the technology. What was it like being among that early B-2 community?
I remember my B-1 commander said, "Tony, don't go there. You're going to be a big fish in a little pond, and there's a lot of other big fish there. Just stay the
Mm-hmm.
B-1, and you're already aircraft commander. You'll go to weapons school, and you'll have a great career." And then I said, "No, you know what? I'm excited about being part of a revolutionary technology and being part of this team to help defend America." So I put in for it, and I'll never forget because at the time they only took like 1 pilot from every base. They narrowed it down from the whole Air Force to 8 guys, and from the 8 they picked 4 guys. And I remember I had to meet with the generals, 1 star and a 4 star. General Loeb was a great general, uh, and I remember him interviewing me, and then General Marcotte, Ron Marcotte, was the commander, and he said to me, Tony, we only have 2 B-2s, and I can only take 4 guys, and there's 80 of you. He goes, what do you think if I make you a T-38 instructor, and then you can put in next year or 2 for the B-2? And then instinctively, I think the academy. I used to be a boxer. I was more like, no, I said to him,
Attack,
and I really
attack,
should have thought
attack.
about it a little more, but I said, Joe Mark, I flew Buffs and Desert Storm, I flew B1s. I'm ready to fly the B2 here. Right now, I don't want to be no T-38 instructor pilot. I know you want to hear me say, I bleed blue, whatever the Air Force needs, but to tell you the truth, he came here to interview for the B2. I go, what would you do if you were me? Just like that, I told him. Joe Marcotte, he put his glasses down and he threw them on the desk and he goes, "Get out of here, Tony." He goes, "I know what you want." And I said, I either became a B2 pilot or I'm going back to the B1. And I was selected. Yeah. It was cool, man. Because we'd go down to Palmdale and I remember being in the B2. There were like six of them in this huge hangar and there was no spin on the plane. And I'm sitting in this cockpit and someday I would fly it. And it was so interesting talking to the engineers. The Northrop guys did an exceptional job. And then after the test guys, we would actually fly it for like 3 hours, land, debrief, and then we'd fly back to Whiteman. And then from Whiteman, there's only one B2 stealth base. They would do naming ceremonies because we only built 21 of them, you know. It was exciting being part of that because they'd have the senators and I got to meet all the surviving Tuskegee Airmen, when we
No,
did the Spirit of New
nice.
York. And
Hmm.
all they wanted to do was talk to me. And I'm like, all I want to do is talk to you.
That's
You're
right.
my heroes, man. What's it like to fly the B2? I go, it's no big deal, man. But they were cool. We became friends with General McGee and a bunch of other guys. They
Hmm.
they ended up inviting me later on to Tuskegee things, and I ended up becoming honorary Tuskegee. And I started what's called the Red
Okay.
Tail Initiative. But those guys are my heroes. They fought and protected bombers in World War II, and they were extremely successful, brave men. And they really motivated me. And to get to meet them, it was so inspiring to be around history, of these incredible men that protected bomber pilots with their lives, and many of them lost their lives.
Awesome story. Yeah, and of course, the Association Foundation are in the process now of building a static display tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen. That's in the works as we speak. Of course, you were part of aviation history there as it was being written, and of course, talking to people who made aviation history decades before that. Of course, as we move farther into the 90s, of course, the success of Desert Storm following the end of the Cold War, there was opportunity to retrench a bit. I know I was the Academy's congressional liaison, working cases of many 93 and 94 cadets who lost the opportunity to attend pilot training. Of course, the number of slots were reduced, and what did you see from your vantage point as things changed a little bit as we refigured?
I saw a shifting, the money drives the training and what's available. So as we shrink, we also have to become more precise in many ways. So I was part of that. I was like, the tip of the sword type of mentality that the B2 still had to do the mission. And when you have the B2 has the ability to carry, up to 8,500 pound bombs. So now instead of having a whole squadron or two of F-16s, you have one bomber that has precision weapons. So I saw the Air Force again have to adapt and overcome as far as monies and requirements. And I was still part of a team that got monies, if you will. In '94 when I got there, I remember I had a slide, and on the slide it said there was more money being spent at Whiteman than the rest of the U.S. Air Force construction budget combined. So keep that in mind. So they rebuilt the entire base and the Air Force invested a lot of money into the B2 as far as the aircraft, the munitions, the training. And as you could see what was recently done with the B2s, it was a good investment.
Yeah, it's proven to be that. So another conflict flared up, as they always do, Bosnia Kosovo. Were you involved?
Yes, sir. When the former Yugoslavia was breaking up, President Clinton at the time tasked us to do Allied Force, it was called. And that was basically Serbia. And you had two main bases in Bosnia Herzegovina, Pristina, and Sarajevo. and I did fly 6 combat missions. I remember uh, Colonel Monetti calling me and says, "Hey Tony, you guys are going to be on crew rest, and we're going to ask you to be the Air Force spokesman, CNN and whatever's outside." He goes, "We've chosen you to represent the Air Force." I'll never forget that. I go, "Sir, I want to fight. I don't want to be no media guy." He goes, "Tony, right now we need you to do that. So go do that." I go, "Do you have a script or anything?" He goes, "No, we know you're gonna just use your common sense. Get out of here." I go, "Yes, sir." I'll never forget that, because they had trained a lot of us because the initial cadre had to do a lot of media. So it's not like I didn't know what I was doing. That they trusted me, the Air Force. And I remember interviewing with like Fox and CNN about the initial strikes using B-2s. And then I was put on, and I flew a bunch of missions there. The big picture, for those of you that don't understand, is that the B-2 Stealth would take off from Whiteman, Missouri. We would air refuel at least 2 times, you know, put the coast out of America and then prior to Europe, and then we'd stealthen up. And there's a button we push called penetration mode, pen mode, and then you go in and you see where the threats are at, and then you drop bombs on target. And then as the weapons come out, your weapon bay doors open, the threats light up and they shoot at you and stuff. And then we had a sign before getting out. It says it's either LO, which means low observable. It's either LO or your ASS will glow. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, I hope it's LO. And then we'd air refuel a couple more times. And then 36 hours later, we'd get into the bunker and see the effects of bomb damage assessment. So, yeah, I was part of that initial team where we integrated. In fact, on one of the missions we went on, it was very top secret. There were only 2 P2s going. Uh, my guy I was flying with ended up becoming a 4-star. Great guy. We got the DFC for that mission, Distinguished Flying Cross, because it was the very first time the B-2 was sent alone and unafraid. I mean, no one else. So when we air refueled the second time, the general said, if they tell you implement Plan Bravo when you air refuel, that means your guys are going in. And I'm air refueling, and the boom operator goes, "Hey, sure, got a message here to implement Plan Bravo." I go, "Roger that." So we went in, we penned up, alone and unafraid for the first time. No fighters, no suppressing. It's, you know, executing the mission the way we've been training. And it obviously worked. And that was surreal. I remember landing after that, coming home. My wife didn't even know I was going on combat. I told her I'm going away for a few days. And I came back and I turned on the news, and CNN had just showed that targets that I had just struck were hit. They said the Navy Tomahawk had done it. And my wife said, "Hey, tell him, do you mind going and cut the lawn?" So I'm like, here I am coming back from a 36-hour combat mission, exhausted,
Back to
watching
reality.
BDA on TV and then cutting the lawn. What a way to fight a war, huh?
Back to life. So yeah. So it sounds like the combat operations there were significantly different than Desert Storm.
The fact that I was in a B-2 instead of a B-52, where one is a flying barn and the other one is extremely stealthy, if you will, it gave me increased confidence. And that's why a lot of people always ask me, of all the bombers, which do you like the best? I love them all. They all have great history. But if I
Like
had to go
kids,
to war,
right?
I'll take a B-2. And the B-21's coming up soon too. Keep in mind that the B-2 can carry either what's called an RLA, or rotary launcher assembly, or a BRA, where you can drop 8,500-pound bombs, or you could do like 16 2,000-pound bombs, or 8 5,000-pounders, or 2 giant bombs, which we used in Iran.
So obviously every operation we learn from it and analyze it and use that experience in the future. So it sounds like that would probably have a pretty significant impact on the future of warfare. Your experiences.
The experiences were that precision engagement works. So what Northrop and Boeing did is they put these GPS tail kits on the weapons, and then they integrated synthetic aperture radar. And so we would take radar imagery of the targets, And then we used this new technology. And if they moved a target, I could just expand, refine, designate, and now the weapon would have the new target coordinates based on my radar inputs. So again, this is the integration of new technology, precision engagement, if you will. So I could at my fingertips affect the target in its desired outcome. So if there's a airplane in a hangar, I could do delayed timing on the fuse right there and then. And then I could see the plane, or I could see I went up against missiles. I remember seeing an SA-3 site, put it right on there, designated. The weapons came out, and now when the doors open, they're shooting at you and you're shooting at them. And it was pretty cool, man. I mean, not cool, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
It worked.
That's
We
what you
beat 'em.
trained for. Yeah.
That's right.
A little less global now and maybe more ground level. What was the Air Force like for young officers in the 90s? What was the culture like? What made it unique?
For one thing, we used to have O clubs, and on Friday nights we'd all go to the club. The spouses would
Mm-hmm.
join us.
Yep.
It was a fun culture, and the spouses would come out, and once in a while the spouses would dress up in our flight suits. So the culture was, I would say, fun. It was family oriented. We had golfing experiences on every Air Force base. Of course, has to have golfing. The academy has a beautiful one. So the culture was one of family orientation, of being involved, of the spouses with the base, and getting different squadrons together to compete in sporting events. There was an emphasis, of course, on training physically, a little bit less than the Army and Marines, maybe.
I know one big change, even in the 10 years between I graduated and you graduated, was the frequency of deployments. But for my first decade or so, there were very few deployments. And then starting with your area, and certainly ever since, deployments have been almost nearly constant for a lot of people. I know that's challenging to military people and their families. So,
Yes,
like your
sir.
thoughts on that.
We were deploying almost, I would say, definitely every year. I was going to Guam for 3 months at a time. We'd go to Diego. We'd go to different places throughout the world. I remember going to Spain and then England. There were certain constant deployments where we are using our strategic assets, almost like moving a carrier group, only we're using air power. And now by positioning the threat closer to the fight, it it shows the enemy, of potential combatants, that there's a force just right around the corner that can, basically affect your lives and your livelihood. We called it the centers of gravity, of what the enemy valued, and we would target that. And so there was constant deployment. It was tough on the family. I was gone all the time. I remember a lot of the reservists and guardsmen, they changed too, because it used to be they'd be weekend warriors, and now they're gone.
Precisely.
And
Yep.
and they're just as active duty force. So a lot of kudos to the reservists and guardsmen who stepped up, especially after 9/11,
Right.
where
Right.
the culture changed to, we've got to combat terrorists that are trying to take away our freedoms.
Yeah, that was definitely a massive culture change. I know, especially for what you said, the weekend warriors, for all their contributions. They signed up for that, but they weren't necessarily expecting it, and it took. They definitely learned quickly that yeah, that's what you signed up for.
That's it. Yeah.
But
And
yeah, and as you said, I'll echo your statement that they do a phenomenal job as part of the overall team. One other '90s thing, of course, the technology, and of course that's the speed with that changes over and over again. The importance of phones. I remember one day at the Pentagon, I'm sitting there and IT comes in and says, "Do you want a mouse for your computer?" I'm like, what the hell? What the hell's a mouse? Why would I want that? I don't even know what it is. So go away. Like, but
I'm afraid of dating myself, but I didn't even know what an email was.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to the squad, they're like, "I'll send you an email." My email, what's that? And he looked at me like I was crazy. And I had an
Yep.
airman teach me, there's something that you could put like a message and you could put it electronically and I could send it to you. I go, "Are you kidding me?" I remember when I was in Desert Storm, we only had like 2 minutes maximum. I think it was like every other week to talk for 2 minutes with our wife on a secure phone.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
these guys are deployed and they're video chat like we're doing. So
Yeah,
yeah, a
yeah,
big shift in
yeah,
the
yeah,
ability to communicate with the home, but you got to watch out, because loose lips sink ships type of mentality. So you have
yeah,
to
yeah.
be aware of that.
Certainly, some of the location finding capabilities that
Yes,
exist now
sir.
that we don't want people knowing the locations. So as we approach the end of our time together, I wonder, when you think back to the '90s Air Force, so what defines it?
I think the leadership defined it and the core values. I remember going in the 90s to the officers club and the general talking about integrity, excellence in all we do, service before self. And all of us are like, wait a minute, you're taking me away from flying an airplane and air refueling. So I got to listen to this stuff. I mean, that was the mentality. I'll be honest with everybody. But the general said, yes, we want you to understand that we're evolving and we're changing, but our foundation must be rooted in our core values
Mm-hmm.
of integrity, of excellence in all we do, and
Yes, sir. Yeah.
service for self. And I remember that because there was a lot of us that pushed back on it, present company included, because I'd rather be flying. But I learned the importance of understanding those values, and then of course they would be tested if and when you're flying to tell the truth and to do the right thing and to serve your country over yourself and value that it's not about you, it's all about the team. So I
Yeah.
thought the Air Force did a great job, not only on the technology piece, looking at the precision engagement, the stealth, the rapid change in communications, and the redundancy and the ability of the collaborative networks to give you the right information at the right warrior at the right time, that time sensitive targeting mentality. We were part of that in the 90s. And then to
Mm-hmm.
put precision weapons on top of that to get the right target at the right time revolutionized air power. We're clearly the best in the world, and we have to continue to have that competitive advantage and to integrate future drones, stealth drones, and space assets, to assist us in achieving our mission to fly, fight, and win.
Well said. And of course, the core values, obviously very, very important, as you say. And shout out to the Academy. Those core values were actually developed right here at the Air Force Academy. Lieutenant General Bradley Hosmer, the superintendent at the time, class of '59, very instrumental in developing those. And then the Air Force saw those and say, "Hey, we like those. We're gonna incorporate them service wide." So again, it shows obviously a very important part of the Air Force culture then and now, and the Academy was a big part of the development of those.
Yes, sir. I credit the United States Air Force Academy, the superintendent, the leaderships, the academians, all of you. Thank you for all you do. And for the alumni associations, trying to bring back the sense of where we came from. We should never forget where we came from, because it's where we've been that we know where we're going.
Well said. Yeah. So we've been speaking with Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Monetti, class of '87. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Any final words for us?
Uh, it's been my privilege and honor to spend time with you. We have a long legacy of the long blue line, we call it, and I encourage any graduate to continue to be part of that legacy and to give up your time, energy, and monies to help the Alumni Association and other cadet programs that are out there, so that we can continue this incredible Air Force Academy experience and keep passing it forward. So thank you. I have this fly mentality. Always go forward, love life, live it fully, and say yes to new opportunities that align with your core values, the values which I stated earlier. So fly, baby, fly.
Thanks, Tony.
Roger that.
The stories we share here are more than moments in history. They're firsthand accounts from the people who lived them, served through them, and helped shape them. By preserving these stories, we help preserve the heritage of the United States Air Force Academy and the long blue line. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a classmate, friend, family member, or graduate who might appreciate this piece of Academy history. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find the Heritage Minute podcast, Heritage Minutes, This month in Academy History, and more stories from across the long blue line at usafa.org/heritage hub. That's usafa.org/heritage hub. For all of us here at the Long Blue Line Podcast Network, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Retired Steve Simon, class of 1977. Thank you for listening.
This Heritage Minute podcast conversation was recorded on Monday, July 13th, 2026. Heritage Minute Podcast is a production of the Long Blue Line Podcast Network and presented by the United States Air Force Academy Association and Foundation.